Don't you just love the smell of a fresh multiverse in the morning? New beginnings may not ultimately mean anything, but how many of us start the new year with a laundry list of resolutions that we're ready to tackle simply because of the universal illusion of a fresh start? Enter James Gunn, Peter Safran, and their much anticipated, and until very recently, extremely secretive upcoming slate. You'll find the details for most of their projects in whatever way you like to engage with IGN stories, but here, right now, with me, we're going to talk about Superman. He's a precarious one, that Clark Kent, and his depiction can make or break your universe for a not insignificant number of fans. With each passing year, Superman gets trickier and trickier to write in a way that's true to character but also fits in a contemporary space. But at a recent press preview for their upcoming DCU plans, co-CEOs Gunn and Safran had some very interesting things to say about the Kryptonian and his impact on the future of the franchise. During the conference, Gunn asks the rhetorical question of what's best for DC and its fans. Is it focusing on writing Superman, or is it stepping aside for someone else to take the reins? He says, "I'm just trying to learn as best I can. How can we keep the quality? Because that's what matters." And he's right about that. But you don't hear a lot of creatives say such a thing out loud. Not in a way that they really mean it, at least. And it's certainly refreshing to hear someone say that they'll get out of the way if need be in service of a greater vision. But Gunn went on to say a lot more things about Superman that has me very excited about Superman Legacy. While broad, Gunn and Safran's statements on a unified canon signifies a new dawn for DC's cinematic universe. While there have been strong entries in the previous universe up to this point, the studio never really could quite nail the cohesiveness of Marvel. And while comparisons to the two franchises usually have very little value, the lack of cohesion has certainly hobbled DC more than it's helped them. Cohesion is only a piece of the puzzle needed to create an incredible multiverse, though. Setting up your tone from the jump can do a lot for a shared universe, and, thankfully, the co-CEOs seem to understand that.
Did anyone check on where the weasel could swim?
Safran noted that we're very confident that by the time Superman Legacy comes out, people will understand what the DCU is. But what does that mean, really? DC is made up of many different characters with wildly different tones from one another. How can we understand the future of the franchise with just one story? Well, it certainly helps that this isn't just a character, it's one of the characters. Speaking, of course, of the DC Trinity, which, at the moment, is just a duo until the Wonder Woman situation gets sorted. The real answer boils down to one thing, though. Do the filmmakers understand the story that they're trying to adapt and what part it plays in the greater universe that they're trying to unlock? The key to a good adaptation is that you engage with but still evolve the original source material. The goal should never be to create a carbon copy of one single story, but at the same time, there's no sense in adapting a character that you fundamentally misunderstand either. How does one bring DC's mild-mannered farm boy to the silver screen in 2023? Or, in this case, 2025? It focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. Superman represents truth, justice, and the American way. He is kind in a world that thinks of kindness as old-fashioned. When it comes to creating a contemporary version of Supes in our current climate, the CW has had plenty of success with Tyler Hoechlin's incredibly warm iteration of the character on Superman and Lois. But the shift in setting from Metropolis to Smallville has also helped the creators approach the character on a much smaller scale. The change in locale works wonders for the CW series, but probably wouldn't bring the same level of intrigue fans are looking for to see Clark navigate life on the big screen, and sans two bratty teenage sons. Sorry, Jonathan and Jordan, you're both the worst. Meanwhile, though it's not as egregious as seeing Martha Wayne's pearls bounce off the pavement for the umpteenth time, I can't imagine anyone clamoring for another Superman origin story either. Don't worry though, Safran and Gunn have both confirmed that that won't be the case. He's a big ol' galoot. He's a farm boy from Kansas who is very idealistic. His greatest weakness is that he'll never kill anybody and doesn't want to hurt a living soul, and I like that sort of innate goodness about Superman as his defining characteristic. If that 1-2 punch of descriptions from the two dudes running the show for the next indeterminate number of years doesn't make you let out a huge sigh of relief, you're probably not going to have a great time throughout the rest of this. Because, as far as I'm concerned, if Gunn and Safran remain true to their vision here, there has never been a more exciting time to be a contemporary Superman fan. Though the existence of the Arrowverse has made it clear that you don't always need Superman to be your starting point to create a successful DC universe, the Snyderverse is a pretty strong indication of what happens when you use Superman as a launch pad and do so poorly. While deeper problems with Zack Snyder's DCEU became apparent over time, they started with the fundamental misunderstanding of Superman's core-defining traits in Man of Steel. Killing Zod gets all the glory in the overarching debate of the film, but, for my money, Snyder's failure to get the hero that he wanted to be the bedrock of his universe occurred much earlier in the movie. For a character known for the line, "It's not about where you were born or what powers you have or what you wear on your chest, it's about what you do, it's about action," Snyder's Superman sure does watch his father get sucked up by a tornado like it was a reasonable path in any iteration of the multiverse. Murdering a monster to save some folks? I don't agree with it when it comes to Superman's story, but I see how some could have ended up on the opposing side of the argument. Now, standing idly by while your mother is far enough from harm to be safe and your father sacrifices his life solely to keep your identity hidden? That's not Superman. That's not good. And while Zod's murder can be used as a defining moment in the young hero's story where he decides to never kill again, paternal tragedy already existed in Kal-El's life. There is not only no narrative purpose for the method of Jonathan Kent's death in Man of Steel, no matter how fixed a story point the death itself must be, but writing Clark in a way that he stands by and watches said death ignores a fundamental core trait in Superman's character. Traits that James Gunn has just made sure to highlight before his version of the character is even cast. Gunn being the one penning the Superman Legacy script adds a certain level of excitement to the story, not because of his successes in other superhero fare, but because of his understanding of how beauty can shine through in the most unexpected places in our messed up world. At first glance, folks might think that that means that Gotham City is where he should be lending his pen first. But, while I won't say that the nuances of Batman's domain are easy, I can say that the small glimmers of hope and fierce determination that drive the caped crusader forward are a simpler mountain to climb than the sharp contrast of a Clark Kent trying to fight for truth, justice, and the American way, when the American way hasn't been so truthy or justicey as our rose-colored glasses may have led us to believe in the past. The boys' Homelander works so well in that archetype because a character like Superman existing in a modern day feels so far-fetched that it can only be told as a joke. And it's easy to call the first Captain America the obvious one-to-one to the DC hero, but Steve Rogers benefits from being the man out of time, which effortlessly justifies his old-fashioned ways, and he's also a soldier who has zero qualms with killing. In fact, the only real immediate example of a successful contemporary Kryptonian operating on a large scale does belong to the CW, but it goes to Supergirl rather than Superman and Lois. Melissa Benoist's Kara Danvers was able to highlight the hope of the House of El while existing in a contemporary America and protecting a major city with frequent success. Some folks made fun of the series for being too earnest, but honestly, if too earnest is a deterring factor, Superman and any of his Earthbound family might not just be for you. Even still, Supergirl matches Superman in hope, but is missing the, as Gunn called it, Galoot factor. Kara watched her planet die and spent years trapped in the Phantom Zone, and is slightly more grounded than her cousin because of it. Clark's saving Metropolis at 8 and delivering a dopey one-liner and flowers to cheer up Lois by 8:05. It's often been argued that Batman and Superman are two sides of the same coin, a fact which both vexes Bruce and makes the two heroes the strongest of allies. Batman is the man who made himself into a god, while Superman is the god who chose to become a man. While the truest distillation of Bruce is the symbol he created to protect his city, one that he often finds himself lost in, much to the detriment of his loved ones, the truest version of Kal-El is the dork from the farm who just wants to give humanity space to be the best that they can be. The two sides of the same coin analysis may sound like innocuous semantics, but it truly does add another level of complicated dimension that is required to successfully nail the hero. There is no alter ego. Superman's goodness is not stipulatory on the glasses or the cape. It's part of him always.
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me! Who's got you?
And a failure to embrace that is a failure to embrace the character. Gunn's understanding that Supes' fundamental, unwavering goodness is what makes the hero incredible gives me so much hope for the future of DC. Superman's decision to be the man rather than the god, one that could easily wipe out humanity with very little opposition, is solely driven by that goodness. To keep it absent in his character is to destroy the central tenet of his ethos. Is it possible that, at the end of the day, the core of Superman is accurately represented in Superman Legacy, but it's at the center of a bad film? Certainly. Man of Steel managed to flip that and be a solid film that simply didn't understand its title character, after all. I could be buying into all the pretty words and putting my faith back in a franchise that acted as one of the personal foundations in my youth immediately after they axed one of the most anticipated films of my life not months ago. Rest in peace, Batgirl. But the thing is, a franchise can survive a bad movie. What it can't survive is a failure to understand the core tenets of its characters and the principal differences between them that drive those individual characters forward. Gunn has proven not just that he understands an ensemble of vastly different protagonists in the Guardians of the Galaxy films, but that he knows what makes each and every one of them tick. Given that the writer and now co-CEO of DC Studios has made it his mission not to lie on main, I'm inclined to believe that the guy both has the right idea and isn't just telling us what we want to hear. Besides, isn't Superman all about hope? For more on the DCU, check out our breakdown of the upcoming slate. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
Who are you?
A friend.